Yiddish poets, short story writers, and novelists flooded the market with a vibrant culture, and it was transplanted from Eastern Europe to the Lower East Side in New York and Chicago, Maxwell Street, and the New York Yiddish writers congregated in poetic groups, and it is very interesting the titles of these, the name of these poetic groups. There were Die Junge, these were the young ones, you know, teenagers and young people in their early 20s writing in Yiddish. The Insichisten, which was, it's a word meaning into the self, introspectivists, modernists, writers, and then Prolet Pen, which was the communists, writers. And so this was a very vibrant, very diverse culture that existed at this time. I'll tell you about my second example, Mani Leib. He was one of the founding members of the poetic group Die Junge, the young ones, in the early 20th century. And wrote beautiful poetry about his working class background, and he became a very popular folk poet on the Lower East Side of New York. At the end of his life, he started to write sonnets in Yiddish. What a concept. This is just an example of that Yiddish. In Yiddish, you could do anything. It was a complete, full cultural spectrum of media, genres. Everything was possible. Theater, film, newspapers, radio, you name it. Everything. You could live a full life in this country in Yiddish. Something that is hard to really kind of wrap your mind around, because it seems so, this must have been 500 years ago, right? It was actually only 50 or 75 years ago, right? It's not, it's a few generations back, basically. William Shakespeare's sonnets had been translated into Yiddish. Very good translation. And was published in a bilingual edition with the English and with the Yiddish. And this came out in 1953. And Mani Leib worked on his sonnets, Yiddish sonnets, which was probably also inspired by Shakespeare's sonnets, during the last 20 years of his life, from the 30s until he died in 53. And these are beautiful. I mean, it's a real beautiful part of his work. And I've selected one sonnet, which is kind of highly unusual, because it's about marital bliss. And this is not something that is very common in Yiddish literature. There's always a lot of strife, you know. So, but this is actually about marital bliss. And this is a mature couple. And I'm going to read a few lines in Yiddish, and then I'll read it in English. And it's called a Plum, which is a plum, a sonnet by Mani Leib. In Kielen oven hat der Balabos von Bäum a reife Fläum a Rob gerissen. In einem mit dem Blatt und eingebissen die teugbläue Haut. Hat von sein Schloss der schloffendiger Saft getan, a Goss mit Kielen Schäum. Und zu verschließen ihr ganzen Saft, a Tropfen nicht vergießen, hat er paar Milch, wie man trocknet, a Koss mit Wein, in beide volle Hände die Fläum gebracht, der Weib und edel zugetrocken zu ihren Lippen. Hat sie mit der Liebe a Dank von seinen Händen genommen, norgen die Fläum. Bis in die Hände ist ihm verblieben die Haut, das Beintel und zerkleckter Schäum. Okay? So this is a translation by the American poet John Hollander. Excellent translator, very good translator, very good poet. It's from this book called The Penguin Book of Modern Yiddish Verse. A plum. In the cool evening, the good provider plucked from off a tree a fully ripened plum, still with its leaf on, and bit into some of its dewy blue skin. From there unlocked, the long slumbering juice came leaping up, foaming and cool. In order to make use of every single drop of all that juice, slowly as one walks bearing a full cup of wine, he brought a double handful of plum to his wife and gently raised it to her mouth, whereupon she could lovingly begin. "Thanks," she said, to gnaw the plum from out of his hands until those hands held only skin and pit and flecks of overbrimming foam. Beautiful, eh?